Hello everyone, I'm Dragons After Dark, and today we're going to take a look at the pets that come from the time rifts. The suggestion for this topic came from Ricardo Rossi, so a big thank you to them. We'll be going over the pets' sources, movesets, and stats to see who might be the next contender for best on a team and who's just a pretty face. Let's get started. All 7 pets have a distinct vendor they can be purchased from for 2,750 paracausal flakes each. I'll name their vendors when we get to the pets, and 2 common sources that all pets can drop from. The Box of Collapsed Reality is the highest reward chest you can get in the pre-boss event, and it appears as though the pets will drop from it at roughly a 0.15% drop rate. And they can drop from the Fractured Causality boss at the end of the rift. It does not appear that the pets are limited to the Fractured Causality associated with their particular time rift, so you can have the Azkaroth pet drop from the Azmerloth boss. Now let's go over the pets themselves. Starting off with the Briarhorn Hatchling, this pet can be purchased from Sorotis, the Olderoth vendor. It's a mechanical pet, and its flavor text reads, loves broccoli, playing, and smashing things, hates meat, sleeping, and mean Titan keepers who won't let you smash things. It's got some nice health on it at 1627, decent power at 289, but it's a slow little Titan Direhorn at 244 speed. While I'm not a huge fan of the slot 1 moves, since Horn Gore has variable damage and Trihorn Charge's hit chance is 85% and it has a 1-round cooldown, I do really like the idea of combining Call Lightning and Trample. You'll get Trample's base damage of 154 plus the 10% of the target's health, plus the 30 bonus damage from Lightning Storm. I wanted to give it a shot and see what it could do, so I flew out to the Timeless Isle to take on Lil Undasta. Since Trample's damage is always going to work best with some kind of flat damage modifier, I grabbed a pet for slot 1 to get the Briarhorn set up for success. Since we need to use Call Lightning before we start trampling, I wanted something with more rounds than Black Claw, so I grabbed a high-powered Exposed Wounds pet. Now it's time to try it out. There's nothing more satisfying than watching an enemy's health chunk down like that. It would have been nice to see something in slot 1 to complement the Trample and Call Lightning setup, but even without it, it'll still be a nice little combo to throw at beast and critter enemies. Doomrubble is up next, and they can be purchased from Falara Nightsong, the Azarath vendor. He's a magic pet, and his flavor text reads, he seems to be very angry, but it's possible he's just hungry. I'm not sure I've ever related to a pet in WoW more than with that statement, but for me, there's a third option that I have to tell people, it's just my face. His health is 1441, which is probably just below average, but that can be mitigated by the magic racial. We have another slow one at 244, but the power is a lovely 317. I like the 2 options for slot 1 with a flat damage building ability with Nether Blast and a variable damage ability with Jab, with them being from different families. Having 2 different family abilities in slot 1 lets us use the pet in more situations than just magic pet versus flying pet. I like the options in slot 2 where we have Consume backed up by a nice power stat, which can do some lovely damage against humanoids, or weakness for our other option. I do like using weakness in strategies, but considering how slow Doomrubble is, I'm not sure how effective this will be outside of the damage debuff. Both enemies and pets have been getting power creep over the last few years, so it's just something to keep in mind when using this pet. As for slot 3, you have the option of a flat damage modifier with Wild Magic, or a heal and debuff / buff remover with Consume Magic. Overall, I think this pet will probably be used for very particular fights versus just being a good general pet to use against anything. That being said, I wanted to use them in a fight to get a good feel for what their performance would look like, so I headed out to the oldest dragonfly, Enyoban. As you can see, Doomrubble can definitely solo Enyobon, and if they go against an enemy that doesn't have a 50% reduction in damage taken, they could really clean house. Next up we have Gill'dan, who can be purchased from Sir Finley Murgleton, the Azmurloth vendor. Gill'dan is another themed Murloc pet, which means it's a humanoid. His flavor text reads, Gill'dan earned his great power by drinking the blood of a demon, which would also have turned his scales green had they not already been that color. Which is actually kind of funny, since we canonically have the pre-fell Morklocks with brown skin when we look at Gromlock. Gill'dan actually has the same stats as Doomrubble, so 1441 health, 317 power, and 244 speed. That being said, their moveset is great in the types of abilities it has, but in practice, it's just an incohesive mess. Having Punch or Felt Immolate in slot 1 is fine, and gives you a choice of a flat damage or damage plus dot ability. They're also from different families, which expands the fights Gill'dan can be useful in. In slot 2, you can choose a big damage investment move with Curse of Doom or a big hit weather move with Call Darkness. Then in slot 3, it's a heal with For Adventure or a defensive move with Bubble. Can you kind of see how individually these slots are great at offering the perfect choices, but as a whole it just doesn't work? Things like Felt Immolate are going to work best when you have a flat damage modifier like Exposed Wounds or Black Claw available, whereas Call Darkness and Curse of Doom pair well with debuffs like Shattered Defenses. Overall, you'll probably want to use Gill'dan situationally instead of a general go-to pet. As an example of this, I headed over to Hanako. I figured this fight against 3 Dragonkin pets would be the best example of how Gill'dan could be used. And even with the miss, Gill'dan took out the whole team. Now, this is still sort of niche usefulness because how many 3 Dragonkin teams do we have to fight against? On the other hand, if you're doing a 1v1, Gill'dan will be great to take out a Dragonkin enemy. You'll have limited usefulness with Felt Immolate against mechanicals without a damage modifier, and I'd probably only use him for Curse of Doom if the next pet up had some way to apply Shattered Defenses. Otherwise, the Sister of Temptation is the better option for Curse of Doom because of her stun ability Love Struck. Now let's take a look at Jeepers, who can be purchased from Provisioner Cora, the Azkaroth vendor. Jeepers is a flying pet, and their flavor text reads, This eye has witnessed untold horrors, and these fangs may be responsible for a few of their own. I love it, and I love the look of this pet. We have another pet with the same stats at 1441 health, 317 power, and 244 speed. Given that Jeepers has phase shift, I would have liked to have seen more speed, but again we have some good options for slot 1 with Dark Talon, a flat damage ability, and Infected Claw with variable damage, and both abilities are from different families. Slot 2 has the mentioned phase shift, or face bite to make you 100% faster for 1 round. Then in slot 3 we have Void Cyclone and Expunge. What I would have liked to have seen instead of phase shift is a hit buff ability to help Void Cyclone's hit chance. Currently, I don't believe we have any pets that have a hit chance modifier and Cyclone or Void Cyclone, which is a shame. That being said, I imagine Jeepers will be most useful in a 1v1 versus a flyer or humanoid who have investment effects that you can time your phase shift dodge with. For example, the Countess, so let's head out to Revendreth and see what Jeepers can do. And just like that, because we can time phase shift with liftoff, Jeepers can easily solo the Countess. You could possibly do the same for a humanoid enemy with similar abilities, just replace Dark Talon for Infected Claw. Our next Time Rift pet is the Killbot 9000 and will arguably be the pet with the most utility out of them all. This pet has the potential to replace an Iron Starlet and a Microbot because of how its abilities are slotted. But first, as you can imagine, the Killbot is a mechanical pet and can be purchased from Gil the Drill, the Azeroth vendor. Its flavor text reads, "Defective, refuses to kill, mark for immediate destruction or sale to less intelligent entity." And to that I say, you don't know what gold for a pet battler looks like, because this is it. The reason I say this pet could potentially replace the need for an Iron Starlet and a Microbot is because you can slot Lock On in slot 1, which takes the place of Wind Up, Supercharge in slot 2, and Ion Cannon in slot 3. So to replace the Iron Starlet, you can do Lock On, Supercharge, Lock On, and for the Microbots, it'll be Supercharge, then Ion Cannon. And looking at its stats, 1400 HP, 309 power, and 260 speed, it's comparable to or better than every Iron Starlet and Microbot except the pure power version of the Iron Starlet. It also has Alert as an option in slot 1 in case you need to break things like Decoy or Bubble, and Warning in slot 3 if you want to make a clean getaway and swap in another pet. It does have Interrupting Jolt, but given its speed, you'll need to be against a pretty slow enemy to make use of this. All around, I would say this pet's utility is high, and since Krog in the Bog came up at the perfect time, I really wanted to see what kind of damage Ion Cannon could do with Killbot's power stat. I hope you didn't blink or you missed it. Killbot does 2,775 damage to a beast enemy, which will take out just about any enemy beasts in 2 moves, unless they have the buff up that limits how much damage they can take at once. It can also do really nice damage with Lock On and Supercharge against non-beast pets, which I show here. Overall, the Killbot 9000 has a lot of promise. Now on to Inruby, who can be purchased from Baron Silver, the Asmorn vendor. They're a magic pet with the flavor text, "A lifetime of servitude to Anubarak, then the Lich King, and now you." Inruby has the same stats as some of the other pets with 1441 health, 317 power, and 244 speed. As for its moves, it has an exact copy of the Nerubian Swarmers moveset, it just has more power behind them. It'd be nice if it was a great choice against humanoids with Consume, Sticky Web, and Leech Life, but because of the humanoids' heal and the fact that we have more humanoids as single enemy legendary fights, you probably won't be able to outdamage their heal with your attacks, and in turn you probably won't keep up with their damage with your heals. Then we could have gone against an enemy that we take weak damage from, but since Inruby is a magic pet, that would be aquatic, and aquatics take weak damage from undead abilities. It's a lose-lose situation for Inruby. Then we have Sticky Web paired with Spiderling Swarm. The problem is that both of these attacks are strong versus critters, but since Sticky Web doesn't actually web the critter because of their racial, you don't get the bonus damage from Spiderling Swarm. This is something that's always bothered me about this particular ability pairing, but it is what it is. You could argue for Diseased Bite in using Inruby against a humanoid for a Magic Family achievement, and that's an option as long as the minimum roll of Diseased Bite will still get you a win, but I'll usually avoid varying damage abilities when I make strategies. That said, I went to a bunch of different fights to try and showcase in Ruby, but insert a womp womp noise here because there just weren't any they did well in. Last but not least, we have the Obsidian Warwhelp, which can be purchased from Warden Krizik, the Warlands vendor. She's a dragonkin pet, and her flavor text reads, "A war-obsessed world turned her into a weapon, but they couldn't break her spirit." Her stats are definitely middle of the road at 1481 health, 276 power, and 276 speed. As for her moves, they are an exact copy of the timeless mechanical dragonlings, minus all the power and the mech racial. As such, you'll mostly use her in the same fashion as the TMD, but you'll probably want to time your Armageddon or Time Bomb with your dragonkin racial if possible. Given that she's faster than the TMD, you might also be able to find fights where she's faster than the enemy and can use Decoy, Razor Talons, and Spark against mechanicals. Just keep in mind when setting everything up, she doesn't have that failsafe of the mech racial to fall back on. That being said, I took her out to Quint to use her and a couple of helpers against those pesky sharks. She took out the first pet, then took a nice chunk out of pet 2 and 3, but that's just an example of what her dragonkin buffed Armageddon can do. And that's going to be it for the Time Rift pets. I'd say the standout is going to be the Killbot 9000, with Ruby being the biggest disappointment battle-wise. But do you agree with my analysis of the pets? Are there any now that you really want to get your hands on? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, I wish you all the best of luck, thank you for stopping by, and happy battling!